Hello and welcome to this exciting MotoGP 21 live stream event. We are going to try and get under the skin of the latest installment in Milestone's hugely successful MotoGP racing franchise. My name is Gavin Emmett and I'm the lead commentator for BT Sports live coverage of what I consider to be the best sport in the world in the UK. And I also provide the English voiceover for the latest chapter in the game. I'd like to welcome along, though, to this live stream one of the key men behind MotoGP 21 at Milestone, and that's the executive producer, Michele Carletti. So good afternoon, Michele. How are you? How is everyone there at Milestone in what are tricky COVID times?
Hello, Gavin. Well, everything's fine in Milestone. We've been working from remote from 1 year or more, and MotoGP 21 has been developed completely from home. So it's been quite a challenge, but we didn't let the pandemic let us down and let the players down. So the game is more refined than ever. It's nicer. It's much improved in terms of graphics, of audio. We've got some very exciting news on the realism department, and there are the new generation consoles too. So I think there's plenty to cover on.
That's so exciting. It's amazing how everyone's able to adapt in these COVID times. So that's seriously impressive, Michele. Now, of course, after the release of MotoGP 20, I know the development team will have received a whole host of feedback from the community itself. And it's obviously a crucial part of game making these days. So How do you go about improving the game this year? What is the big news in terms of gameplay? And can players expect yet another step forward in terms of strategy and the realism?
Yes, we always listen to the community because we are very keen into reading into forums, reviews, feedbacks, social networks. So we're very much into this. The community provides its own idea, but obviously we've got ideas on our own. So that's mixing the two things. This year we've got many improvements under the realism package. This means physics with a new brake temperatures management. It means also long lap penalty and regulation system fully implemented to the game. Then we've added this thing we had many years ago in older titles, and we're bringing it back. That is catching the bike and running to the bike after a fall and setting it upright again. It means losing time, but again, it's more realistic. And all of these things under the realism and simulation hood are all under player's choice. So you can choose to have everything turned up, so you can have all these things to manage, to think about. You have to manage your risk, your time, but also for newcomers, you can turn them off. So you can just ignore the consumption, ignore the damages and all the things. So it's very nice so that you can welcome new players or give something for accustomed players, returning players, and simulation lovers. And add on top of this that the new generation of consoles with PC too allows to go to 60 frames per second, so it's much more realistic and much better to perceive the bike. And in terms of perception, the new PlayStation 5 haptic joypad adds a new layer, because with the triggers, you can feel the limit of the grip of the tire. With the vibration, you can hear all the reaction of the chassis. So I think there's many things to learn, to master, and to feel into this new title.
Naturally, that's something that you can do through the haptic joypad itself to get the feeling of the bike, which is what riders are always talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we have got, actually, Michele, an educated audience, haven't we, along for the ride here. So why don't we delve a little bit deeper into some of those mechanics, physics that you mentioned. Brake temperature is something that I have to bear in mind racing, I mean in real life, but it's something now that the game players are going to have to use in MotoGP 21. Why did you choose to implement this? And how is it going to work, this idea of brake temperature?
Well, brake temperatures are something, can be subtle, can be influencing the race mechanics. It's something that jumped into the audience attention last year. A remind of Viñales in Austria, where he had severe trouble with the brakes. Truth is, especially MotoGP bikes have carbon brakes. Carbon brakes have a range of temperature between 200 and 800 degrees. In this range, there's an optimal spot where the performance of the brake is better, and then you have a variation of performance in terms of braking force and reaction to the first part of the braking. Outside, you have a severe lowering in the braking performance. So you have to manage the way you tackle each track. So some tracks are more demanding, so you risk to overheat the brakes, or in other spots you risk to have lower temperature of the brakes. And so it's about the track layout, it's about your riding style, how hard you hit the brakes, or how soft you can be. But also you can do this from the bike setup, because you have a choice of larger or smaller discs to have a more aggressive or a softer braking. But we have introduced also the option to have high mass or low mass brakes. These two tend to have a different performance with temperatures, so they dissipate or accumulate heat in a different way. All of this is something that affects subtly or more importantly the braking mechanics, and so your strategy through the race. So it's a layer you can have that can be nicer and more realistic. So it's something that a real MotoGP rider has always in mind like the tire, like the fuel, like the power mappings, and then we have added the brakes to complete a package of realism for players.
Well, hopefully players won't be having to jump off at turn one like Maverick Vinales had to do last year in Austria, because that was seriously scary at well over 100 miles an hour. Moving forward then, Michele, with some of the new features, I see that you've integrated, if I can put my teeth in this morning, but you've integrated the dreaded long lap penalty, which is something the racers out there really don't want to see coming up on their dashboard. It's quite recent, actually, addition for the race direction arsenal, or a real world penalty. So do you think having the long lap penalty in there is going to increase competition and that real life simulation vibe? And how are you going to manage those penalties in game also?
Well, for those who don't know, the long lap penalty is a new way to manage penalties introduced a couple of years ago. Before that, you had something like a ride through in the pits that compromises completely the races. For lower infractions, so they've introduced these corners where in each track there's a special corner with a longer route around it, so you'll have, if you're committed, you have to make this longer path, and you lose some time, but not so much to compromise completely your race. So what does it mean? That in some situations where you go out on the green tarmac of the tracks, you get warnings. We can get 4 warnings. With the 5th one, you have to do the long lap penalty. In case of jump start, so if you release the brakes, another mechanic we have into the game. So if you use the clutch and release the brake a little earlier, you make the jump start and you are committed to do 2 long lap penalties at your choice when to do them. This adds a layer of realism, because you can have relaxed rules into the games or very strict ones like the ones in real life. And it's very nice because it's been demanded by the players over time, and it's something that requested to change all the tracks layouts, but it was due because it's part of the MotoGP we see every weekend, every race. So it's a very nice addition for realism. And obviously, it's up to you. If you use relaxed races, quite likely you're not going to have a long lap penalty. But if you commit to have fuel experience, fuel realism, it's there for players.
It is something, actually, Michele, we have seen all too often recently, especially in Moto3. Next, you're going to have to put in a pit lane start after Pedro Acosta won from there in Qatar. But one thing I have to say, Michele, that strikes me about Milestone's MotoGP franchise, and I do say this as someone who hasn't been to a racetrack in 18 months, but previously I hadn't missed one in 20 years. The game is so realistic. Having seen Austria just there makes me want to be there. The experience all around it is so familiar to the one you actually get from being on site, and it feels like every aspect of a real race is replicated. Now, I have seen some of the social media teases that you put out recently, and one of them was the bike retrieval feature. And this means that if you fall, if you crash, you have to run to your bike, get back on it, and then rejoin the race again. No automatic respawning, so just like real life. How will the gameplay experience change with this edition? And do you think it's something that the players are going to have to really bear in mind when they're pushing the limits of their machines?
Yes, players that choose to have this option activated, because you can still stick to respawn or even rewind to avoid falls altogether. But if you choose to have this option on and to have the full realism package, it's something that you have to keep in mind, because think of being mid of the race with the tires halfway burnt, with fuel consumption going on, and to manage the power mappings with the brake temperatures you have to think about to have ideal braking spots, and think that maybe you have to keep an eye on the evolving track, so you have to adjust your riding style constantly throughout the race, and then you have the calculated risk of being at the verge of falling, and if you do so, you risk to damage the bike too. So maybe the aero fairings get damaged and the bike gets not so balanced, or maybe it can be broken off so you cannot get it back to the truck. So you have to keep your mind active in terms of calculating completely and continuously the risk of your actions. And then, so it's a realism option that puts no interruption in any moment, from the moment you fall, from the moment you get back to the bike, and you get back to the race. So it's something for realism lovers, and it's something that we're very proud of, and it's been requested by players too for a long time, so it's there for them.
And if we keep talking actually about the single player mode, career mode is definitely one of the features that the community love the most. So what are the ideas behind the 2021 edition? And can we expect some more managerial tools along with some other new bits?
Well, yes, the career mode had a big update after launch last year with the junior team. Now the junior team has been fully integrated from day one in 21, much better and much more incorporated into the game dynamics. Besides the junior team, that basically means that when you move up to higher classes, you can open up your team with fictional riders that you can choose, manage, hire, fire, and get results from the lower classes, Moto 3 and Moto 2. So you can even watch the races. It's very nice and relaxing, but at the same time, very strategic in terms of choices. Then for your career, there's completely, we've remade the test for development of the bikes. Last year were more straightforward, now are fully integrated, so there are a set of goals and objectives you can perform to get some knowledge to develop the bike in your headquarters. With the career, you'll have to manage your performances, the team, hiring people, engineers, personal manager, so managing also some parts of the finances of the team, managing the results and the expectations, and then eventually open up junior teams to have more fame and results. So it's a very complete and complex package. Again, you can choose to have all the sessions, you can choose to just run the races. It's up to you. It's a very custom experience, but for those who want to enjoy it completely, it's very rich and even more refined than before.
So in-depth, Michele, so realistic. And of course, the personalization aspect is part and parcel, isn't it, of career mode. And it's always been a great part of the game, which is definitely deeply loved by the community. And I know that you've got something special to announce this year. What can you tell us?
Well, yes, when you enter the career mode, you can use your own teams, so fictional teams with liveries created by us. And this year are nicer than ever. We have also doubled the racing liveries for the suits of the riders. And it's all with real sponsors. We work in conjunction with Dorna with this. But this year we've also added something special. There are a little set of stickers to celebrate and integrate even more some content creators, some streamers that have been following us through the years, producing hours and hours of content that players watch and enjoy. So that's a way to say thank you to them and to involve them even more into the game. So here it is.
I'm sure it's definitely something that's going to be appreciated. Now, Michele, last year, with the COVID pandemic sweeping across the world, the MotoGP race calendar was completely transformed, wasn't it? And we actually went to a circuit that MotoGP had never been to before, and that's Portimao on the Algarve coast of Portugal. And it is widely regarded as one of the best, if not the best, racetrack in the world. They call it a motocross track on asphalt. And it wasn't actually supposed to be on the calendar again this year until the postponements of Argentina and Austin in the USA. And in fact, it is now the next round of the championship this weekend. So how on earth have you managed to incorporate it into the 2021 game, Michele?
Well, it's been possible because it was already present in Ride 4, so not exactly the same track, not exactly the same content, but we've been able to pick it up, rework it, and to make it into MotoGP fittings so that it can be into the game. And it's a very demanding track. As you were saying, it's got some dramatic elevations, some blind spots, some blind corners, so it's a very demanding track. Especially for the MotoGP class, and but we've gone even further than incorporating the Portimao track. We've added an option at the beginning of the championship to have the ideal championship, so with USA, Texas track, and Argentina, or a realistic option to have the real calendar that is going to be through the season. So you can choose to be in a positive world with no COVID going on, or you can stick to reality and opt to have the realistic calendar. It's something that is, again, it's been demanded by the players. It's something to add realism, but not to lose some fantastic tracks on the way due to this horrible pandemic that's been going on. But we keep on and we keep strong against it, even with these little touches.
That's absolutely superb to see. I love Portimao so much. I'm so excited. I love the fact there we have Marc Marquez on track as well in front of us, just like we're going to see this weekend in MotoGP.
Yes.
That was a good choice, that one, Michele. We've asked for questions from everyone who's been following us, Michele. So let's try and get through a few of those if we can. The first question I've got coming for you is from Mike19. Thanks everyone, by the way, who has put in a question. Mike19 says, how does the bike retrieval work for AI and in multiplayer?
Well, the bike retrieval feature is quite complicated. So in day one, it's going to be for the player only. But we're already working on porting it to both online and AIs. They are different challenges because, they are very different topics. Our AI basically is very used to run the bikes and not go on foot. But it's going to be done, and it's going to be done quite soon. We've got a roadmap that will cover this and many more things during the very, very first weeks after the release of the game. So it's one of the things we care about, and I'm eager to be able to deliver it to the players.
That's brilliant. Thanks for that, Michele. So our next question is from S Frenzy or Sfrenzy, I don't know which way around it would be. How does the next-gen hardware allow you to increase the overall quality of the game? And will there be any exclusive features for DualSense?
Oh, well, as I was saying before, on the next generation of consoles, the game really shines because we can afford to have very solid 60 frames per second. That is something that helps not only the visuals, but also the gameplay, the feelings. And there's 4K dynamic resolution, so it's more shiny. The overall quality of textures, of rendering, of levels of detail is being obviously increased. So it sometimes looks like a very different game under some circumstances. And so it's one of the things that brings the next generation very close to the PC version of the game. So it's a very engaging way of appreciating the game. On the PlayStation 5, there's this haptic joypad that allows to do some very, very nice things. Besides the usual vibration that tells you something about the chassis of the bike, we've been able to work with the triggers. So the right trigger tells you about the throttle, so how the wheel is spinning. So if you feel the trigger rumbling, you know that the rear wheel is going to spin and you have to limit it. Obviously, the less you use the traction control, the more you incur into this feature. While the left trigger is connected to the brake. So when you are very close to the limit, so you're braking while possibly leaning, you feel the trigger vibrating. That's the very, very, very edge of control. So when you enable these features, remove the helps, you can feel like it's not only about the resistance of the triggers, because we modulate the resistance in different ways, but also about the way you can feel the vibration that tells you are on the very limit. So it's something very, very nice to feel and very unique.
I'm going to need to upgrade. That's all. Basically, that's all I'm learning from what you've said so far, Michele. Another question that we've got from The Crown. MotoGP 20 was a little bit unforgiving in terms of physics. So can you tell us more about how 21 will help us to improve this feature?
Well, MotoGP 20 had several levels of simulation. It was delivered in this way. So you could have the full simulation, an intermediate, and the lower one. In the lower one, actually, it was not so unforgiving. It was very hard to fall due to braking or power sliding. But many of the players felt like it was something removed from the realism, because there were some other parameters working under the hood, so the actual game was somehow simplified. This time around, we have split the helps in several options, separate one from the other. So you can go into the options and activate some dedicated helps only to the braking. So what it does is not to alter the overall physics, but to just modulate the brake for you. So in full simulation, you are under the risk of falling. You can have the wheelie when you brake very hard at high speed in MotoGP, or you can fall during the corner if you brake too much. Into the intermediate, you have a comfort zone you can reach, so it's more forgiving. While in the lowest setting, that means the higher helps, you can trust the brake so that it will never throw you on the ground. But we have added more. There are some modulation options, like when you pull very quickly the braking or the throttle, it adds some modulation time. It doesn't go to the maximum input instantly, so the chassis, the tires have time to cope with. So you can activate these and more helps gradually to ensure you reach your sweet spot, your comfort zone, personalized into the game. And I say to the players, do this because not everybody is trained to ride a full-blown MotoGP bike with no helps. But the helps are there to be used, to learn, to gradually turn them off, to use the electronics into the game while you're riding, so that you can understand where you can move to fully appreciate, because these bikes are so extreme the helps are there to get to the point of being and feeling like a MotoGP rider. But obviously, you need some time, and it's absolutely natural. For example, riders coming from Moto2, the first time they get onto the MotoGP, the electronics are made to cut something like half of the power, and it's totally normal because you cannot cope with the tires, with the chassis, with the braking at the very same time. So you need your time, and it's there for you to get to the game and enjoy it at the maximum.
Yeah, no, it does sound like it's something that you get used to and something that you learn, isn't it? And you evolve as you play the game. Right, we've got another one, a very apt username here. Rush on Track has a question for you, and I'm assuming this is cross-platform. You'll understand this maybe more than me, Michele. Are you planning any kind of cross-play?
On this, I'm sorry, no, because cross-play is very complicated. We are possibly in the most complicated moment of this cross-generation, because MotoGP is going to be on the next generation, on the current generation or old generation. And so it's very hard. And as a company, Milestone is working towards the cross-play feature that for us means also many other topics. For example, in the future, sharing content produced by the players. We're not there yet. We're working for this. We're working for the future, but it's more complicated than it appears to the players, because it's one of the things that, when it's done correctly, it looks like it's simple, but it's actually absolutely not simple. So we're working with the R&D department to do this in the future, but unfortunately it's not there yet. So it's one of the things we wish we could have, but it's demanding and it's complicated.
Yeah, I'm sure it's something you'll be working towards in the future, but sounds tough. Another question for you, Michele, then from Speed Tommy. And the question is, there will be bike damage in case of crashing, or will there be bikes damage in case of crashing, which I think you spoke about before?
Yeah, there is. It depends on how hard you fall, if you turn it on or if you turn it off. You can have it only cosmetic. When you fall, you can damage different areas of the bike from few scratches. Then in MotoGP, you have these aero wings that can be broken off. So you can feel the bike like has a slightly different handling, like steering from one side to the other. And it's something very realistic. I remember one of the first rides of Pecco Bagnaia, where he chopped off one of the wings and he had to stop because the bike was basically very hard to ride in the straight. And it's something we reproduced. The bike, after a crash, could even be stopped and not working at all, forcing to a retire. And it's something that you discover when you rush to the bike, with trying to retrieve it, and you discover it's not working. So yes, the feature is there. It's quite complicated. We made it in depth. If you want, you can turn it off. If you want to enjoy the risk, it's there, and it's very, very detailed. Obviously, Moto2 and Moto3 don't have winglets, so you can experience different kinds of damages, and it affects the bike in a different way. So it's there, and it's pretty much in full-blown as a feature.
And realistic, obviously. As you mentioned there about Bagnaia losing one of the wings. Final question we've got for you, Michele. This is from Lihis Racing 58. So obviously a Marco Simoncelli fan, which I like to see. Will we see Moto E when the game comes out, or in a later update?
Yes, it's one of the things we plan to add later on after the release. We've got Moto E. Moto E is going to be released sometime after the day one of the game. Not too much. We'll be covering this with our channels in the next weeks. But even sooner, we're going to have the Rookies Cup, the Red Bull Rookies Cup too. It's one of the two categories that we usually add to the game. Why it's not in the game? Because it's one of the categories that doesn't start the season along with the other classes. So possibly the real bikes, the real riders, the real sponsor liveries are not ready yet. So we need some more time along with the real category to get ready. But we're working on this, and it's going to be available quite soon after the release of the game for free.
Perfect. Absolutely superb. It's been so exciting to see everything that you've integrated in the game for this year, Michele. I think on behalf of everyone, congratulations for all the hard work that you've put into things, for all your team as well, working behind the scenes, working from home to get it all there. So congratulations, because I'm excited to see it.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you for hosting. It's been very nice to be here to get in touch with the players, because it's something that we don't do all the time, but it's a very pleasure for me to be here and to try to answer the questions and to illustrate the game. So thank you.
No, thank you, Michele, and everyone at Milestone. So just a reminder to everyone who is watching, the most authentic MotoGP experience ever is ready to go on the starting grid and ready to fire off. Remember, the next chapter of MotoGP 21, is going to be available on April the 22nd for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series XS, Nintendo Switch, PC, Steam, and the Epic Games Store too. So thank you to Michele once more. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy the next installment of MotoGP.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.